Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages. You know, I love podcasting. I have since 2006, back when you had to use like a Dixie cup with string to make the thing work. And that's why I'm so excited that we recently moved Mysterious Goings On to Anchor FM to record our podcast. I gotta tell you, I don't regret it a bit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. I'm not going to lie to you, when I first heard about Anchor, I was a little dubious because I've been doing it the hard way for so long. But I got to tell you, it's very easy. Use a Stripe account. Get sponsors. You're not paying monthly hosting fees. The sound quality is great. The distribution is phenomenal. Friends, download the free Anchor app today if you want to start your own podcast, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Remember, you heard it here first on Mysterious Goings On. You know, one of my all-time favorite characters in pop culture and fiction, Buckaroo Banzai. Stay with me here, folks. Stay with me. It's a very quirky film. Peter Weller starred in it. But the premise centers upon the efforts of the polymath Dr. Buckaroo Banzai. He was a physicist, a neurosurgeon, a test pilot, and a rock star. And he's going to save the world. Well, why am I mentioning that when I'm talking about our guest today? Because when I started reading up on author Max Hawthorne, I got a real Buckaroo Banzai vibe, because this guy is quite the polymath himself. I was just freaking out. Let me just do the intro here, and then we'll welcome him in here. He's known as the Prince of Paleofiction. Max is the author of the award-winning Kronos Rising series of sci-fi action thrillers, as well as Memoirs of a Gym Rat, an outrageous expose of the health club industry, and the children's book, I Want a Tyrannosaurus for Christmas. Max was born in Brooklyn, and he attended school in Philadelphia, where he graduated from the University of the Arts. So in addition to being a best-selling novelist, he's a singer-songwriter, amateur paleontologist, cryptid researcher, blog talk radio host, IGFA world record-holding angler, and a voting member of the Authors Guild. He's obviously an avid sportsman, and he's a conservationist. His hobbies include archery, fishing, boating, boxing, probably nuclear physics, I made that up, and collecting fossils and antiquities. He lives in the greater Northeast with his wife and daughter, and a pair of enormous Siberian forest cats who, when they're not stalking Max's toes, sleep on his desk as he writes. Let us all welcome my new favorite polymath, Max Hawthorne, to Mysterious Goings On.
Thank you so much. I actually got tired of listening to that stuff. I didn't realize I do all that. I think I need to slow down a little. My God.
You really should, man. I mean, pace yourself. Oh, my God. No, I mean, that's fascinating. I love that. And I think that's probably very indicative as to why you're such a good and successful writer, is you have a variety of interests, and you actually are living life and experiencing life. I hear one refrain I hear a lot about authors, younger authors in particular, is they haven't lived a lot of life. And a lot of their things that they write about, they appear to have gleaned from pop culture rather than actually having their own personal adventure. Sounds to me, though, like you are a bit of an adventurer.
Yeah, it actually, I mean, I've been on the water as an angler and boating and such hundreds and hundreds of times. So that kind of loaned itself to the genre that I tend to favor. So between that and a lot of life's experiences, some good, some bad, you kind of tend to get a lot that you can draw upon when it comes to your writing.
Is it the water that draws you and that led to you writing this series, or is it what's in the water, or is it all of that, or is it merely just an escape from land? I mean, if that sounds like a strange question, but I'm just curious what drew you into this story.
Well, as a kid, I grew up having a dad who was a rock hound. I don't know if are you familiar with that term? Mm-hmm. So my dad was always buying, selling, collecting fossils and minerals.
Right.
My interest is more in the fossils. You know, you're a kid, you see these giant shark teeth and dinosaur bones and stuff. And I always tell people, I remember at one point I was only like 7 or 8 years old, and he had purchased or acquired this skeleton of a juvenile mammoth, and it was sitting on our piano, on top of the piano. And when you're a kid, the bones look like Godzilla's, of course. I mean, they were
Yeah.
gigantic. But so I grew up with that. And then as I developed an interest in fishing and such, the two kind of synced up. So when you think about, especially in prehistoric times, the oceans back in the Jurassic and Cretaceous were infinitely more dangerous than they are now. I mean, everything that was out there would eat you without a second thought. So
Right.
when you combine that, and then obviously then there's the fear factor of human beings. I mean, we're pretty sorry on land.
Yeah.
Bereft of technology, we're basically a walking buffet for a bear, a tiger, a lion, a wolf, whatever. But if you put us in the water, we can't run, we can't climb, we can't hide, we can't really do much of anything. How fast is the fastest Olympic swimmer? 3 miles an hour, something like that. So, you're in the water, and then you can't even see what's under you, let alone go down there and breathe. I mean, who knows what's going to come up? Yeah. So all that kind of came together, I guess, kind of, herded me in that direction.
It's funny you said, because I'm in Kronos Rising in the book. From the perspective of the creature, there's these tasty mammals running around on this ship.
Yes, tasty. And you know what it is I try to, when you put yourself in the viewpoint of the creature,
Hmm.
a lot of authors don't do that, but I try and do that. I try and always put my mind inside of whatever I'm representing. And so you want to do this in a way. I mean, you're dealing with a pliosaur. This is kind of like a gigantic marine reptile the size of a whale. For people that aren't familiar, you picture like an immense crocodile, but with a short tail and four big flippers instead of legs.
Mm.
That's kind of like how you could sort of picture one. But this creature would be different, obviously, than a whale. Obviously, certainly different than a person or a dolphin or anything like that. So, how does its mentality work? And I wanted something that came across as primeval, a very cold, primitive sort of intellect, instinctive thinking. What does it care about? What does it focus on? It kind of make people like feel more like the thing was real, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was surprised when I got to that part, because early on in the book, we're seeing everything basically through the eyes of this captain of this Japanese ship that's up to some illegal activity, some basically fin harvesting, right? They're harvesting fins from sharks.
Hiroshima.
Yeah. So I get to this point in the story, and it shifts perspective to the creature who is eyeing all these yummy mammals running around on this boat. And I'm in for a good time here with this book.
Well, I try to make it enjoyable for people. I've noticed that, like when I read Peter Benchley's Beast many decades and decades ago, which I thought was a great book. One minor complaint I had was that you really didn't get a lot of scenes from the animal's point of view. And I imagine perhaps that's because it's hard to develop an intellect or personality for a mollusk or something.
Yeah.
But I think that people would have wanted more of that. So I strive to create that so that you could run multiple plot lines and switch points of view from the hero and heroine to the monster to the human villains, this type of stuff, and keep things a little more interesting, build up the suspense, the anticipation, that kind of thing. You want to keep it, lively and keep people turning the pages.
Well, that's the whole thing. Now, what we're talking about, folks, is Kronos Rising, which is the first in the series, correct?
Yes.
And this book came out about 6-7 years ago. But how many have you done now? You've done more than four or five of this series?
There's been 4 full-length novels, which was Kronos Rising and then the Kronos Rising Kraken trilogy, which are all pretty sizable books, as you might imagine. And then there was a novelette called Kronos Rising Diablo, which actually takes place before book 1. So it's kind of like an extended prologue of what happens on Diablo Caldera, where this creature came from. So you get the whole behind the scenes kind of look in terms of like life in this island and how these animals survived and why they're here now and such. And then there was another one called Plague that kind of bridges the gap because there's a 30-year time jump between
Yeah.
Kronos Rising and Kraken 1. And during that time, there's a lot of things going on as a result of this pliosaur. And I don't want to spoil things for people, but the effects it had on the environment and the oceans and other things like that. So, well, I guess the name plague kind of gives things away. So yes, there is some Cretaceous era bacteria involved
Oh
that,
man.
you unleash stuff that, like, when they dig stuff from the core of the earth from millions of years ago, and they say, oh, we found living nematodes and things like that. People are like, don't open that. Don't play with that. Don't eat it. I mean, that's, you unleash something from 65 million years ago into an ecosystem where people aren't equipped to handle it, like mammals, et cetera. You could have a big problem on your hands.
Yeah,
And
it's like I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what you're doing too. It's like Time Bandits, the movie. Don't touch that; it's evil. I just still remember that scene. No, it's so true. Now, let me ask you though. Jake Braddock is our protagonist here. Now, and maybe it would be giving away to say if he's in all of these or not. I guess he wouldn't be in all of these stories, but he's in more than one, correct?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yes.
Kind of. Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
he is.
Well, here's the deal, folks. Even if I kind of technically almost, gave you a hint, once you start these, you're going to want to keep going. I know I do. I mean, seriously, this is some fun stuff. And I think it was just what I needed too, by the way, Max. I mean, it was, I write mystery, cozy mystery and stuff like that, but I kind of really needed this. I needed something that had some horror elements and has some sci-fi elements and it is a page turner. So I tell everybody, all of our listeners, as we always say, stretch a little bit, jump genres, try something new. And I'm glad I did with this.
Oh, I answered you, but it froze again.
It froze. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. It's okay.
No, I just said thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, so you're, besides a writer, you're also into cryptids. So I was kind of thinking when I was reading this that it wouldn't be a pliosaur, that the creature would actually be a monstrous coelacanth.
Something that is on my bucket list of fishing for catch and release purposes, by the way, a coelacanth. But no, I mean, I have a piece of a huge coelacanth skull in my fossil collection.
Really?
It came from a fish 15 feet long. But
now, for folks who don't know, and I'm very just an amateur into cryptids myself. I just like to read about it. I'm not smart about it, obviously, but for a long time they thought it was extinct forever, right? And then was it the 60s or something? They found one. They pulled one in. I don't remember exactly, but
yeah, there is two, I believe, known populations of coelacanth. They're not as huge as Mawsonia, which was the one from the Cretaceous that I was talking about. But the modern or extant coelacanth, I'm not sure about the actual species, but it gets to be about 6 feet long, about as big as a person.
wow.
And it's amazing that it survived, being a lobe fin and the way it moves and such. But it's a predator. It's got sharp teeth, sharp reflexes, beautiful animal. I mean, I'd love to even swim with one. Since we're too big to eat, probably don't have to worry about getting, grabbed. Unless there's a pliosaur down there eating coelacanths, and then,
the series has done really well, and you've got a lot of critical acclaim, and you won some awards. And I'm sure that's just icing on the cake for you as a writer. But it's got to be nice to one, to be a bestseller. Are there other avenues beyond this series that they're working on or have worked on?
I'm I don't want to say all over the place, but I mean, obviously I did the children's book and I did that expose, early on. That was more like to try and help the general public, because I saw so many people get screwed over in health clubs, So that's why I wrote Memoirs of a Gym Rat, so people could know what goes on behind the scenes and protect themselves, so you don't get roped into some huge contract or what. But anyway, I'm digressing. So the Kronos Rising series is going to continue, because I'm afraid to not continue it, I will be lynched. I mean, like, if you saw the reviews for the last book, they're like, is there going to be more? Please, Max, please, hint, 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 this other stuff like. But I'm glad I didn't make any promises that there's another book on the horizon or leave them hanging, because in the trilogy, each one ended in a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. So they were screaming for the next book. I would get emails and messages and even a few letters and whatever. But so that'll come along. Right now, I'm actually working on a horror novel.
Hmm.
of mine. It's something I wrote the screenplay for like 3 years ago, and then I put it in a drawer, after registering copywriting, of course. But
Of course.
anyway, and of course, but and I really feel that it's going to make a great book. It won't be as huge as these, probably maybe 300 pages, I'm hoping, or
Hmm.
something like that, instead of 500 or 600. But and it's a great story, so I'm sure my agent, she's going to like that. And yeah, then I'll be doing another Kronos Rising book, which is already mapped out and has been for some time. And I mean, I have a list of like 50 books to write, of all different categories, sci-fi. I mean, the ideas, they come to me in my sleep, and I wake up and I'm like, wow, that's a great story for a novel, and then I'm like messaging myself with the cell phone there so I
Yeah.
don't forget stuff while I go back to sleep and stuff. And then, but sometimes it's so bad, I'll have like the entire story in my head. And I get up and I'm sending message after message after message after message. I try to go back to sleep, and it keeps going and going and going. And finally, I'm like, oh, I get up. It's like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I come downstairs and I open up all the emails and I start organizing everything and da 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 da. Da. And next thing I know, it's time to get my daughter up for school. And that's why I look like this. See, losing my hair, circles under my eyes, vampire skin. Oh God.
You
But
know,
anyway, I never get writer's block. Okay. It's more
Apparently.
like hold the door shut so nothing else tries to come in.
Oh, well, that you're blessed in that regard. I always say that being a writer is like always having homework. It's just there. If there's always something you could be working on, right? And it's funny. I've got a series of 7 books, working on the 8th one now, and I've had people, not probably as nearly as many as you, obviously, beating down my door, but I have people who do contact me and say, Alex, come on, it's been a year. Where are we? What's going on? But I get that. But I was going to ask you that in that context, but I think you've already answered the question. Do you ever feel kind of like Conan Doyle did with Sherlock Holmes, a little handcuffed by this? But I guess you're really excited and still pumped
In
about
terms of
Kronos.
getting like tired of writing the same subject matter. Well,
Yeah.
I try to make changes, and I think the readers need that also to keep their interest.
Hmm.
Like the first book is primarily marine based. There's
Hmm.
very little that happens on dry land. If it is, it's at the coast or something like that. But it's all on a ship, near the shore, that type of stuff. In the Kraken book, the first book, I introduced other aspects of it, including the caldera that had been where these things came from, and submarines that travel underwater to hunt and fight these things, and a military base. So I added all that, and then I kept expanding and expanding and bringing more into it. So by the Kraken 3, I'm dealing with terrestrial stuff, as well as everything else. So I mean, it can get a little monotonous because there's only so many ways you can describe a pliosaur eating something. You know, you try. You know what I mean? You're like only so many ways you could tell the story and keep it fresh. Okay, but I mix things in, etc. When the series continues, it's going to continue to go in other directions. And I mean, just the 30-year time jump was a big help.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
to change technology, change the ecologies of the seas, things like that. It's nice to play around with stuff. I mean, it's not like plasma rifles and Terminators running around and stuff like that, or outer space, pliosaurs in space. Oh my gosh, keep my mouth shut. That'll show up on like sci-fi next, instead of like Sharknado, Pliosaurnado. Shh. Don't do it, guys. Copyright Max Hawthorne 2021. You heard it here first. So, but yeah, it's, it can be a challenge to keep things interesting. Maybe that's why my brain is churning out new stuff all the time. I don't know. No.
Well, if you'll pardon me for asking a bit of a process question, you
Mhm.
probably get this a lot, but I'd love to know, particularly since you opened the door to it by talking about how you get these ideas in your sleep and you wake up. What's your writing life like? Are you somebody who has mapped out a certain time of day and you crank out a certain number of words, or do you set a kitchen timer, or do you write in bursts? How do you do it?
Well, it's tougher than it used to be,
Hmm.
and not just because of the cats. And if this was a video Zoom thing, I would bring Olaf in here and show you what a 20-pound Siberian forest cat looks like. Because
Wow.
these two characters, like I have to lock my office door because they know how to open the door. Otherwise, they will come into my office while I'm working, or and lay all over my desk. And I don't mind that because it's a big desk and I can kind of push them, but it's when they're on the keyboard, you got like, all right, I need some space, and I slide them over. I got a unicorn bed for one on this side. I've got the recliner on the other side of the office over here for the other one, who is asleep in my recliner right now next to me over here. But so the cats are a bit of a problem, but they're good. The real thing is time. It's like,
Hmm.
there's only so many hours in the day, and my daughter's not doing aftercare anymore. So I really have to marshal my time because I don't have that extra window of 3.5 hours from like 2:30 to 6 o'clock anymore. See,
Yeah.
but when I'm writing, I would say I write about 3 hours a day
Hmm.
on a guess, but that's fully edited,
Hmm.
meaning like I usually bang out about between 1,500 and 2,500 words a day, so probably 2,000 on the average. And I will like map out what I'm going to write. My stories are very organized ahead of time, so I kind of know everything. And then before I start, I sit there and then I picture the scene in my head, and I think it through, and I see what's happening, who's there, what's that, everything, like what they're moving through, what they're walking on, anything they touch, all the visuals. You have to have them in your
Right.
head. So I get all that in my head, then I write it rough. Then I go back through it and I go, who the beep wrote this beep, like that, everything. I'm like Mace telling to the cat, did you mess with my keyboard when I was in the So then I edit the heck out of it. Okay. I clean it up. I polish it. I repolish it. I go through it. I read it on the screen. And then I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. Then I print it. And then the real editing seems to start. Because for some reason, and I recommend this to any writer, if they don't do it already, when you see a hard copy of something, for some reason, things jump out at you that you don't see on the screen. And I don't
Mhm.
know if it's because on the screen it's more piecemeal.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing just one graph at a time or something, and it's more book-like when it's on the written page. But I go through that hard copy and I edit the heck out of it again, and then I fix all that stuff, and then I do a final read-through, and I still find stuff, and it's a never-ending process. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it works.
Is there a certain challenge you found? You don't strike me as someone who lives with challenges. You seem to surmount them. But is there a challenge you found in your writing? Is there something that bedevils you with every book that you have to work through, or no?
Well, I have three issues. The first issue is I'm very choosy about what books I read.
Mhm.
See, I have this, I don't know what you call it, this tick, this I don't know, paranoia, and I tend to absorb things around me. So if I read like a great author's work, I'll get inspired by it, and I might find some verbiage in there that I like and things of that nature. But if I read a book that's garbage, I'm paranoid that it's going to stick with me and it's going to mess with my writing. I swear to God. So there are many books I'm like, get that away from me. I will not even look at that. Oh my God. That's the first thing. I'm sorry. What was the question again? My brain is like I'm scatterbrained today.
Just if there is a constant thing you have to work through, a challenge with every book you're working on, that or maybe there isn't.
I got you. Yeah. The one thing is, I was struggling a while back because I had been badly injured. I had like a really bad back injury, and,
Oh,
and yeah, and a horrible neck problem caused by a chiropractor.
oh, nice.
People can't see this right now, but
He's
he's number one. But anyway,
times two.
as my daughter used to say when she was 3, Daddy, why did you show that man your finger? I was telling him he was number one, Peanut, and then everybody was number one that day, including a cop. Cop pulled up next to us, and she's like, "You're number one. You're no," and I'm sitting there, I'm like, God, I am so going down. But anyway, so because of that, I couldn't sleep.
Hmm.
I was in pain all the time. I was taking painkillers all the time,
Hmm.
handfuls of Advil and Tylenol and all sorts of other stuff. And it was really making like my brain was like mush. So
Yeah.
between that and the exhaustion and stuff, it was a very difficult time for me to write. And that's why some of my books were delayed. I mean, 2 years between novels and stuff.
Sure.
But I'm past all that. So the only problem or struggle I find is when I'm rusty. And because what tends to happen is I get a book done and then it comes out and there's promotion and all that other stuff. And I'm so busy doing all that stuff, I'm really not diving into the next book. It's like I'm
Hmm.
taking a break for 3 months or 6 months or something like that. And then when I start the next project, I'm like, and I stare at it. I'm like, how did I write all this stuff? And then I'll look at the last book and I'm like, wow, I am freaking great. Look at this. How did I come up with all this stuff and everything? And then it's slowly I pull it back out of myself. It's always those first 3 or 4 pages where it feels like, you're like the Tin Woodman with no oil can, and you're like trying to break that rust on it. Crack, 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 oil can.
Oh,
And
God.
yeah, and once you get that groove going, then it's, and then you read it, you fix it, you refurbish it, and then it's really beautiful. Those first few pages flow, then it's sort of the I don't know what you call it. The doors open and the Pandora's box and everything comes out.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I was curious about that. I think every raw author probably has that same cycle going, or not every, but a lot. I know I do, because once I get it done, and I'm just sick of the sight of it, I don't want to. The last thing I want to do. I mean, and kudos to you for doing a media tour, because there's a certain point. I've done book signings, the whole thing. There's just a certain point where I'm sick of my own voice, which is of course why I do a podcast, right? But anyway, but I just get tired of my own stories, and I get tired of my own writing and all that stuff. So I always find I need some kind of palate cleanser. But then let's say I step away from writing and I write something else or do something else.
Hmm.
When I get back though, you're exactly right. It's like oil
Mm.
can, because it's just I start to freeze up. And I think as the older I get, I'm in my 50s, the older I get, the tougher it is for me. I don't know. So it's interesting to hear that from your perspective.
Yeah, and it isn't like I hadn't been writing up until a month or two ago. I actually just finished a book, but it's nonfiction.
Hmm.
I did a book called Monsters and Marine Mysteries, for Beyond the Fray Publishing, and it's going
Oh,
to come out in a couple of months. It's a book on cryptid research, including some research I've done personally, things I've seen, and a lot of people I interviewed that nobody knows are even still alive that have seen some incredible stuff. But this stuff was not. It's not writing a novel.
right.
It's like you're a reporter, like blah 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 blah. At this point, this happened, and so, and according to so and so, and it's all very blah blah blah. And they're like, ugh, there's no imagination to it. There's no like art. There's no, it's, the visuals you're creating are minor. You're not, creating life. So it's nothing like novel writing at all. But I mean, people
It,
will
it's
like it. It's in a nice book. It's got some great stuff in there, but it's just not for the same for me. You know.
If you don't mind me asking, are you do you confine your cryptid research and writing to marine life, or is it every kind of cryptid, like potentially Bigfoot, that kind of stuff?
I saw one
What?
actually.
What?
Yeah, yeah, in Connecticut of all places. Believe it or not. Yes, I know you think I'm bonkers. It's in the book, and I don't go out hunting for cryptids. Okay, I've encountered things just being on the water, for by sheer volume. You're out there enough, sooner or later you're going to run into something. Okay, but I don't, and I'm too old and fat these days to go out, slogging through the swamps and brush trying to hunt down a 9-foot man ape that could rip people's arms out of sockets. But not my cup of tea. But no, yeah, this is, wow, gosh, it must be 25 years ago or something like that. It was in a lake in Connecticut, and it was apparently a young one, and it was swimming. Seriously, yeah. And yeah, it was like reddish brown, covered with hair. The head was like bobbing up, and it was working its way toward me. I was on fishing a causeway
Hmm.
between two parts of the lake. Like it had two thin lanes there, or maybe one, I think it's 2 lanes, but it's piled up rocks, and the causeway on these rock pile deep down there. There's a channel that connects the 2 lakes, and there's I guess a reinforced concrete tunnel that allows fish and other life to travel back and forth, and the water, obviously, etc. And so this thing was, I was out there fishing, and I had bobbers out with live shiners, and I'm sitting there, and my brothers, those 2 characters, went to the other side of the fish, the other part of the causeway, the other lake, and I see this thing surfacing, coming closer, and go under, surfacing, go under. It could hold its breath for a while. too. And the head, it was like, I was like, what is that? And I was thinking, I'm like, that's too big to be a beaver and way too big to be a muskrat. And I'm like, it's got to be some sort of animal. Is it a deer? No. And it had this dome shaped head.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the as it got closer, I could see it was fairly long, like about 5 feet long. And I thought, is that like an enormous Irish setter swimming in the lake? I mean, I'm trying to justify these things
Sure.
to myself,
Yeah.
and it was that color kind of. And it got a little closer. It was still, the last time I saw it, it was at least, I'd say, about 60 feet away still. But it was an overcast, damp day, nobody on the lake, and it was like very early, just like dawn.
Mm.
But and we were the only idiots out there fishing, let's put it that way. And we didn't catch anything, which shows you we didn't know what we were doing. But so yeah, it got closer and closer. And I guess it heard me at one point, because I was like looking, and I don't know if I had a camera or not, but I adjusted my feet, and the gravel, the rocks that I was on, like they shifted a bit, and then it went under. And as it went under, its arm broke the surface, and I saw its shoulder, upper arm, and forearm. It had an elbow like this, and it went under like that. And I was like, what the hell am I looking at? Like that. And it went under, and I could see it, it was deep down. I could see like the water, the disturbance as it went through the tunnel. So I run up like an idiot, and I run across the road, and I go to my brothers, and I'm like, guys. And I didn't know what to call it back then. I was like, there's a hairy red thing in the water. It's going to come out right now, right here. Look. And they're all sitting there. And, there was a disturbance. And then something weird happened, like off to the left. There was these, a lot of water lilies on the left side there. And something started like splashing around in there and stuff. And like a bird took off and stuff like that. And I think it was in there, but they didn't see it. And they were like, yeah, sure, you're whatever. Or they called me a few names and whatever stuff. But yeah, it was interesting. And they swim with their legs together. Like, when you see people doing the mermaid thing.
Like the mermaid,
like
yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
It was swimming like that. Yeah. So,
that's just fascinates me. And I mean, yeah, the first thing you said too, I'm fascinated that up near Connecticut, you just don't, I always think of the Pacific Northwest when I think of potential sightings. And it's, I'm a big, I don't know if this will mean anything to you. I'm a big Grover Krantz fan, the late Grover Krantz, who was, I mean, if any documentary from the 60s on until he passed away in the 90s, I think, he featured this guy. He was over at Washington University or Washington State, I think, and he wrote several books about Bigfoot, and I've always been fascinated by it. So I guess I'm going to be buying your book when it comes out. I want to see this.
It's not the first time that something like that had been seen in Connecticut. I looked it up online, and I found this report from like over 100 years ago of some fishermen on the same lake who reported seeing a, quote, hairy wild child, as they called it, playing in the lake. So like, either this was a young one, it was only, like I said, about 5 feet long, had the heel or whatever, or there's something else out there that we don't know about. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And they start small and then they get big. And you would think a child would be more likely to mess around and play in areas where it shouldn't be doing things it shouldn't be doing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I assuming this is what it was, you're probably very lucky that you didn't actually get anywhere near it, so to speak, right?
Well, the thing is, I mean, can you imagine if I had like a crankbait and I managed to snag it, and then try to reel it? I mean, that would not have gone well. But usually when there's one, there's more than one, and there's a parent, and you don't really want to. I mean, I have a friend who in Canada encountered 3 of them, and 2 in the same day in the same area, and one of which actually walked right in front of his vehicle out of the field. And he was standing there, and he was asking, he had seen the first one walking along. He thought it was like a giant basketball player in the distance or something like that. And then he pulled up to the side of this lake. There was a big lake there, and there was a Native American guy, fisherman, in a boat there. And he got out of his SUV, and he turned to the guy, and he said, hey, is there anybody else, like walking around out here like that? And all of a sudden, the guy looks alarmed and then ducks down behind his boat's console and hides. Didn't warn him something's coming. He just hid. Okay. And then he turns, and I take his word at this. This thing was 12 feet tall. 12 feet tall.
Oh
He
my
said its
God.
rear end was as high as the tops of the windows on his full-size SUV. Okay. It walked right in front of his SUV within 6 feet of him and then turned and then went into the woods. And he was standing there like, I don't know if he peed himself or what, but he was like terrified, I imagine. But that guy left him to get eaten or something, like that fisherman.
Yeah.
He didn't, hey, there's a giant hairy, 1,200-pound thing behind you or something like that. That's pretty messed up. But
Well, I mean, I don't have to run faster than Bigfoot. I just have to run faster than you. I mean, it's that old. So
exactly.
I mean, yeah, Max, that's always been a thing with me. It seems to have in my life, it's waned quite a bit. I just kind of expected by this time of my life they would have had some proof where they caught one or something. But you're apparently still in the camp that they're out there.
Oh, I have no doubt that they're out there. I think that there's a concerted effort to keep people from knowing what's out there. And you can fit me for any size tinfoil hat you want, but there's so much evidence, so many sightings, etc. And plus, they just got that DNA report finally.
Or did they?
Yeah, in fact, that actually is the proof right there that there's been nonsense going on. Yeah, it's oh my gosh, he writes the Missing 411 series, David
Oh, yeah.
Paulides,
Yeah, I
and
know who you're talking about. Yeah, uh-huh.
and for years and years they were collecting DNA samples, and every time they would try and send one to a lab, the lab would refuse to help them, refuse to help them, refuse to help them. As soon as they found out what it was like a gag order was on them. Okay. I swear to God. And then this one lab, they didn't tell them what they suspected it was. They just said human DNA. They had gotten, I heard his show. They got 3 different samples. One was from a Sasquatch that had ripped somebody's storm drain off the side of their house, like a 10-foot section of it, and bit it. I guess he was very angry. And there was gum tissue and blood where his fangs penetrate his teeth. And there was another one that had gotten, I feel bad for this, eating out of a dumpster. And a woman called and said, there's a Bigfoot in my yard. And as it reached over, like in the hinge point of the dumpster, it was open, it got some of its hair follicles ripped out with the actual follicle. So there was DNA, not just hair. So
Right.
because the hair comes across as an unknown human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the third one, they put, this one's kind of funny, but they took a plate and they attached rough sandpaper to the bottom of the plate. And then they put pancakes with butter and syrup on it. And the creature, they knew there was one in the area from all the sightings and stuff, and it had been avoiding their trail cameras because they can apparently see infrared. But and it took the pancakes and it ate them, and it licked the plate, and it got blood. It bloodied its tongue on the plate, and they got DNA from that. So they had all these 3 confirmed samples, and when they went to submit them, they just said human DNA, and then the guy got the report back. And he calls him up and he's all excited. He goes, this is incredible. He goes, what have you got here? I mean, this is amazing. And we've got this and this. And when he found out what they said it suspected Sasquatch, he went ape, refused to talk with them, wouldn't deal with them. And they had to take him to court to get their samples back and to get the test results that they paid for. And they did finally. Okay. So according to the DNA reports, this is per Dave and his people, okay, which get all the credit. I'm just repeating his stuff. But the ancestors of the Sasquatches that they tested, goes back 15,000 years. They can actually go all the way back. DNA is that accurate now. And they found out that the mother, they have the same female that was the ancestor of all the ones they tested, was a human female 15,000 years ago. Okay. And she had mated, probably repeatedly, and I would imagine against her will, with something unknown. The other half of the DNA is completely unknown. There is nothing known like it. Now, my personal suspicion is that based on the fact that people tend to be, 5-6 feet tall, not much bigger on the average, and these things are 2-3 times, sometimes 6 times the weight of a grown man, the real big ones, and covered with hair and super strong and ape like that. Whatever mated with her was obviously some sort of enormous ape. See, like Gigantopithecus or something like
Ithacus,
that.
right?
I mean,
Yeah,
this is where this, this unknown DNA is coming from something. Okay.
yeah.
But that's where they all came from, which also, since there are some reports of these animals that are extremely large, like the one like my friend saw, okay, that are much bigger than the average. It's possible that the progenitor of this, the other half, is still out there. I mean, people have seen conflicts between these creatures where like an
Hmm.
8-foot one was attacked by a 10-footer that eventually killed it. Hunters saw this and ripped its stomach open and ate its intestines and all this stuff. Yeah, horrible stuff. So I would imagine that there's some sort of, like dogs and wolves kind of thing between these species, that kind of thing. But anyway, we're digressing from into Bigfoot country now.
Okay, yeah, you can't stop. But I got one more question about this. You can't
Okay.
leave me hanging here. I gotta
Sure.
know then. Tell me then. All right, if this is the situation, why and who? Why would it be hidden from us? Why couldn't it just be announced? Hey, just like the mountain gorilla, just like the panda, these things that used to be mythical are real. Why is it being hid from
Well,
us?
I think there's a twofold answer to this. Watch me get a knock on the door from the feds tomorrow after this.
Better you than me.
Yeah, really. But my thinking is, and I'm not a Bigfoot expert. I'm a novelist, but I do a lot of research. Okay. But the first aspect of it is the religious end of it. You have many religions in this world,
Right.
powerful religions, lots of money behind them, etc. I mean, it's big business. Let's be
Hmm.
realistic.
Yeah, of course.
And so if you're announcing all of a sudden that there is another race of man, a humanoid creature wanting this planet, then your whole Adam and Eve stuff and all this other things go out the window. Evolution is proven, you understand, and a lot of the basis for a lot of the world's religion are then flushed down the toilet.
Huh.
So you
Okay.
got to think
Yeah.
about it from a financial aspect. People with the money tend to influence other people. Money and power. I mean, why would these labs all refuse to deal with the guys? You
Yeah.
see, they had to trick somebody in order to finally get the truth. Okay. So, I mean, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, I mean, I've read some crazy reports, but is that each year, many people go missing in national
Hmm.
parks. And
Yeah,
this
they
has been
do.
going
Yeah.
on for well over 100 years, documented, goes back into the 1800s. Okay. Thousands of people. Polides has a whole series of books on this. I read one about hunters.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, think about it. You're, 3, 4 friends out on a hunting trip. You're walking through the woods. You're experienced woodsman. You've got high powered rifles. You're walking in single file. You're talking amongst yourselves en route to wherever you're going. All of a sudden, the guy in the back is gone, disappears. Like, hey, Steve, what do you think? And Steve was there 30 seconds ago, and Steve's gone, and they can't find him. Now, what can grab a grown man with a rifle and he can't even cry out, and then he's taken by something? See? So I would imagine that if this came out and there are so many thousands and thousands of people that have disappeared in these parks, and if it was proven that certain agencies of the government knew about these creatures all along for 100 years or 50 years or whatever, and people weren't warned or anything like that, I would imagine there's probably be a lot of lawsuits, a lot of liability involved too.
You know, it's
So,
uh, it's not really an X Files kind of answer. It's really dollars and cents is what I'm hearing, and frankly, it's a very Occam's razor kind of thing. If you ask the question like I did, what would be the reason?
mhm.
Well, money. I mean, that's a great point. You're not. Well, I'm pleased that it wasn't the $6 million man Bigfoot connection. If that came from you, I just didn't know what I was going to do. But I'm a little
Andre
older
the
than you, I
Giant.
think. Yeah, there you go. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, very good. Thanks so much for the indulging me in that digression. And as in our closing moments here, though, folks, I've got to tell you, we're going to have a link in the show notes to Max's work. You've got to go. And also, it's a very entertaining website. I'm not going to ask him about it because it's on the website, but there's even a great FAQ section where it's detailed how he fought a 200-pound alligator. I mean, there's some stuff. This guy's lived. When I said earlier that he's had adventures, this man has had some adventures. Max, in closing, what would you like everybody to know, and where would you want to send them to go look at your books, and anything else you want to just drop on them before we have to say farewell?
Well, the first thing is, if a big gator decides to try and eat your father, I hope you have a better weapon than a fishing net to fight it with. Okay,
Ooh.
that's the first thing. If you that was some story, let me tell
Ooh,
you.
man.
It was like I was like, I'm picturing this author eaten by reptile, by aquatic reptile. Like my readers are like, we always knew he'd go out like this. But it's an interesting tale, and people can all go to maxhawthorne.com or kronosrising.com and check it out. If anybody wants to get in touch with me personally, there is a thing for my publisher on the site and an address, a mailing address, but also on social media. I'm usually just on Facebook. I mean, I
Mm,
have like a Twitter and Instagram account, but I never use them,
okay.
honestly. But on Facebook, they can look me up there. I have a group called, well, first there's the Kronos Rising novel series fan page, which is pretty popular. And
Hmm,
then the group that I usually interact with most that I manage is called Max Hawthorne's Monsters and Marine Mysteries. And if
hmm.
anybody wants to come check that out, they're more than welcome to say hi, and if they want to join it or not, or whatever works. So
Well, that'd be fantastic. All these links will be in the show notes. And Max, I'm going to open the door right now and just let you know if you're so inclined when the new book comes out about the cryptids.
mhm.
As you can tell, I'm interested. I'd love to bend your ear about it. Just, you know where to find us here, Mysterious Goings On. But I want to thank you again, Max Hawthorne. Not since Buckaroo Banzai have I found a polymath quite so interesting as this gentleman's. Max, thanks so much for being here on Mysterious Goings On.
It was my privilege. Thank you so much.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, huh? Not quite Mysterious Goings On, listeners. You probably haven't got the brand new Mysterious Goings On official t-shirt. This is a quality cotton t-shirt coming in a premium unisex tee version and a women's slim fit tee version in all the sizes you could possibly need. These are great quality shirts coming in a variety of colors, including dark heather gray, black, charcoal, maroon. And on the women's t-shirt, we come in dark heather gray, black, charcoal, indigo, and midnight navy. There you go. Check them out. They are in the show notes. The link is right there. They're being sold on Bonfire. They're typically sold in batches and they'll come at you pretty quickly. All the instructions are on the website. The link is in the show notes here or at mgopod.com. Again, show the world, well, at least show the world on Zoom or show the world when we can finally really get out and about. Show the world that you have some mysterious goings-ons of your own by wearing our t-shirt and help support this show. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading.